Today we honor our common ancestor, Joseph Richards, and his family.
Joseph Richards was born March 16, 1762 at Southborough, Worcester County, Massachusetts, the son of William Richards and Sarah Bixby. Massachusetts has a population of about 5 million and joined the Union in 1788, the sixth state to do so. The state of Massachusetts is due south of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and borders with New York on the west and the Atlantic Ocean on the east. Joseph was 14 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. At the age of 15, Joseph enlisted for military service as a private in the Massachusetts militia. After 2 other short terms of service, he enlisted for the 4th time on June 13, 1778, for the term of 8 months at said Framingham, and proceeded through Worcester and part of Connecticut to Peekskills on the Hudson River, and there joined Captain Moulton's company in Colonel Thomas Poor's regiment. After a short time, marched to White Plains to meet the British, who had marched from New York, and they retreated to New York without an engagement, and said regiment was marched to West Point, where he remained until sometime in the winter, and then was ordered to King's Ferry, and there remained until the expiration of said term, and returned to Framingham, where he arrived in the latter part of February, 1779. In the fall of 1779, he again enlisted at Framingham for the term of 3 months, and proceeded to Clarac, New York, then to Worcester and Springfield in Massachusetts. He was ordered to a place about 6 miles north of Albany, and there joined Captain Cranston's company and remained a little more than 2 months, and then returned to Framingham. About March 1, 1780, he enlisted for the 6th time, proceeded to Providence, Rhode Island, and there remained until discharged, and then returned to Framingham, where he arrived about 7 weeks after his enlistment. As a result of forced marches and fasts, sometimes of 3 days' continuance, Joseph's health was impaired.
Joseph Richards was married December 20th, 1781, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, to Rhoda Howe. Joseph and Rhoda made their home in Framingham, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, where 4 of their 11 children were born. Returning to Hopkinton, Joseph farmed and worked at his trade as a cordwainer. They became members of the First Congregational Church of Hopkinton, January 14, 1790, and raised their children to be God-fearing men and women. For his service in the War of Independence, Joseph received a bounty of 160 acres in Berkshire County, western Massachusetts. During the summers, he would take some of the older children to help clear the farmland, plant an orchard, and build a new home for his family. By the spring of 1815, they were ready to move. Bidding goodbye to their friends and relatives in the East, they took their journey westward to Richmond. There both sorrow and joy awaited them. 3 of the children married, and they buried their daughter Susanna. Joseph continued to farm and also operated a cider mill.
At the age of 78, I passed from this life 2 years after the death of my beloved wife, Rhoda, who will tell you more about our family. Rhoda Howe Richards was the eldest of Phineas and Susanna Goddard Howe's 10 children.
I was born in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, July 8, 1762. Joseph and I were both 19 when he asked and obtained my father's consent to our marriage. Father and Mother were members of the First Congregational Church of Hopkinton, although in Mother's opinion on religion there was some difference from the sects to the present day. She believed that Jacob's ladder was not yet broken, and that angels still continued to ascend and descend. Our marriage intention was recorded in the Congregational Church more than 3 months before our marriage. Our first 4 children were born in Framingham. I was glad when Joseph decided to return to Hopkinton because there I would be near my parents. 7 more children were born to us in Hopkinton, and there we buried our little Levi and Betsy. The home Joseph and the boys built for us in Richmond was well constructed, from the large kitchen with its windows to the south and east, and bedrooms for us and the girls downstairs, to the boys' bedrooms upstairs. Sickness seemed to plague us here as it had done in the east, but we had our happy times too. Father Phineas Howe died before we left Hopkinton. A letter from my mother dated August 5, 1827, was among my cherished possessions. She lived to be nearly 95, departing this life in January 1837. In February, 1 year later, I followed her, leaving my husband with only Rhoda and William still at home. Our eldest son we named Joseph for his father. He was obedient, a steadying influence on his younger brothers, and a great help to his fathers. We would like you to meet him. Joseph Richards, Jr. was born in Framingham, Massachusetts, September 29, 1782, nearly a year after the surrender of Lord Cornwallis to George Washington.
When I was about 7 years old, my parents moved to Hopkinton, and I remember the welcome we received from Grandma and Grandpa Howe. Being the eldest of my father's 11 children, he depended on me to help with the farm work and home chores. Later, I obtained work with other Hopkinton farmers. I was living at a Mr. Morris's in the spring and summer of 1805, earning money in preparation for my marriage to Nancy Cody. Our marriage intention was published in Hopkinton, October 19, 1806. We were married in Dudley, November 27th. When my father's family moved west to Berkshire County, we were well established on our farm near Holliston. Our first child, Isaac, died as a babe, but 9 other children came to bless our home. We were members of the Congregational Church and taught our children to fear the Lord and to walk uprightly before Him. My younger brothers, with the exception of William, were persuaded to join the Mormons after reading the Book of Mormon and hearing Cousins Brigham and Joseph Young expound its teachings. They tried to bring me in too, but I could not accept this new religion. In January 1845, Cousin Fanny Young wrote of me. He does not yet discover the necessity, it seems, of fleeing from Babylon. I hope the Lord will stir him up until he will open his eyes to the realities that surround him and flee to Zion. But I remained in the East and died in Westboro, Massachusetts at the age of 69. I hope you descendants of my brothers in Utah will find my descendants, that we may be again united as a family. Rhoda Richards, the eldest daughter of Joseph and Rhoda, named Rhoda for her mother, was born in Framingham, August 8, 1784.
Father took us to live in Hopkinton when I was about 5 years old. As I grew older, I helped Mother with the housework and took care of the younger children. My health was not robust. Thinking it would improve in a higher climate, I was sent to stay with Uncle and Aunt Ledbetter in Richmond. I was there when baby Willard was born. He was a boy of 2.5 years when we first saw each other. I learned to knit, spin, and weave. When the manufacture of cotton goods was first introduced into Massachusetts, I was one of the first to learn the different methods of preparing and working it up, and there was a ready sale for my homemade straw bonnets. My cousin Susanna Brigham, who lived in Southborough, was married at 19 to Mr. Ebenezer Damon. She died following the birth of a daughter, Susan. Aunt Susanna took the little one to care for. Then Mr. Damon began keeping company with me, and we became engaged. He brought little Susan to stay with me until the wedding day, which would have been New Year's Day, 1815. However, he took a bad cold and died in spite of all we could do for him. Our wedding day became his burial day. Little Susan was taken back to her grandmother's, and I went to help Grandma Howe, who was then blind. The family moved west in the spring. My health continued poor, and it was determined I had cancer. The 31 doctors who attended me, who had the privilege of displaying their skills upon me, had all but killed me. I was gradually becoming blind from the effects of the powerful pills they prescribed. Finally, an operation was deemed necessary. I went through this ordeal without the benefit of anesthetics, relying on the Lord for my strength. My recovery was slow through autumn, winter, and spring. With the coming of summer, Brother Willard drove me to the hot springs in Augusta, New York. A stay of 8 weeks brought renewed strength, and I was able to return home to help care for Sister Susan, who was dying of consumption. Willard took up the study of Thomsonian medicine in order to help with the sickness at home. While visiting relatives in the East, he was shown the Book of Mormon, left there by Cousin Brigham Young. After reading it through twice, he was convinced of its truth. Father and Mother wanted nothing to do with it, but Brothers Phineas and Levi, Sisters Nancy and Hepsy, and I believed. I was ready for baptism, but waited until Sister Nancy could get her husband's consent. She and I were baptized by Brother Phineas, June 2nd, 1838. A complaint was signed against me by Asa Cone, September 27, 1838, for having embraced the dangerous and unscriptural doctrines called Mormonism, and I was excommunicated from the Congregational Church. This was a blow to Father. He was glad Mother wasn't there to witness it. Sister Hepsy had gone to Missouri with Brother Levi. Willard was in England, and William had married, leaving me to keep house for Father. After his death in 1840, I prepared to join the saints in Nauvoo, bidding a final farewell to my friends and family in Richmond in late September 1842. I journeyed with Brother Willard and his wife and little son Heber John down the Hudson River to New York, thence to Philadelphia, then by cars and boat to St. Louis and on to Nauvoo, where we were welcomed at Uncle Haven's. In Nauvoo, I was sealed to the prophet Joseph Smith and endowed in the Nauvoo temple. Willard's wife Jeanette was laid to rest in Nauvoo, leaving me to mother their 2 children. After the martyrdom of the prophet, we had to leave our home in Nauvoo, traveling across Iowa to the Missouri River, where winter quarters was established. From winter quarters, Brothers Levi and his wife were called to fill a mission in England, leaving their 3-year-old son Levi Willard in my care and his Uncle Willard. We traveled across the Great Plains to Utah in our covered wagon. Sister Nancy's daughter Amelia was with us. Little Levi Willard had the misfortune to fall and break his arm. As no doctor was in camp, Brother Phineas set the arm and it mended nicely. To keep the little boy as quiet as possible, Amelia and I taught him to read. We arrived in the valley October 20th, 1848. Levi Willard and I lived in our wagon box through the winter, with furniture, boxes, and utensils piled high. Spring came early, and we were able to plant peas in February. After Brother Levi's return from his mission, I helped in his home. At the first Old Folks celebration held in Salt Lake City in 1875, 180 folks over 72 enjoyed an outing at the Great Salt Lake, dancing, singing, and sailing on the lake in the city of Corinne. I was the oldest woman. I died at the home of my nephew Levi Willard, January 17, 1879, at the age of 94. I have been lovingly remembered by all the family as Aunt Rhoda.
Susanna, the second daughter of Joseph and Rhoda, was named for her grandmother Howe. She was a dutiful child and a great help to her mother.
I was born in Framingham, August 13th, 1786, and moved with the family to Hopkinton when not quite 3. Grandma Howe was particularly fond of me, her second granddaughter and namesake. Mother taught me the housekeeping skills required of girls in our day. And when Sister Rhoda went to live with Uncle and Aunt Ledbetter, I was able to do much of the work about the house and care for my younger brothers and sisters. The year before we moved to Richmond, Father took Mother and Rhoda with him when he went to work on the new house, leaving Brother Phineas and me in charge at home. The next year, when the family left for the West, I stayed for a time to help in Brother Joseph's home. In Richmond, Brother Phineas and Sister Nancy married. As their babies came, I was called to help with their homes. In the passing of years, I developed a persistent cough and began to tire easily. Doctors said I had consumption, which was a common ailment then, and one very little could be done to cure. I wanted Sister Rhoda to be with me at the end, which came April 11th, 1830. I told her I think my friends will have no reason to mourn my passing, but it left a vacant place in our home, not easily filled. I had been a member of the Congregational Church in Hopkinton, but had not spoken before Reverend Mr. Dwight of the Richmond congregation, so Father prayed over my grave in the corner of the garden back of the house. In 1841, Sister Rhoda was baptized for me in the Mississippi River, and Cousin Fanny Young, in her letter, wrote of me, "Susanna will doubtless be brought up by her friends to rejoice in the new and everlasting covenant."
Phineas, the second son of Joseph and Rhoda, was named for his grandfather Howe. I was born in Framingham, Massachusetts, November 15, 1788, and helped my father on his farm when I was a boy. I was reared in a splendid family, my parents being religious people in the Congregational Church. Ours was a loving and united New England family. Having the same love for my country that my father had, I enlisted for service in the state militia, went to Boston, and became a sergeant major in the colonel's staff before returning home. When I was 30 years of age, I married lovely Wealthy Dewey of Richmond, Massachusetts. After our marriage in 1818, we lived in Richmond, where our 9 children were born. We were saddened by the death of the first 3. In 1825, I was appointed coroner for the county. I heard of the gospel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints through my cousin Brigham Young. To investigate the church further, I traveled to Kirtland, Ohio in May of 1837. I became acquainted with the prophet Joseph Smith, and being satisfied that the church was true, I was baptized by Brigham Young June 12, 1837. I was ordained a high counselor by the prophet, and was appointed by him to work with Reuben Hedlock to procure means to publish the Pearl of Great Price. The prophet had me ordained as a missionary in November, and I returned to Massachusetts. There I baptized my children and 2 of my sisters. I did missionary work in the states of New York, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and was blessed with the Spirit of the Lord in healing the sick and converting members to the church. Returning to my home, I worked to build up the branch in Richmond. My family became devoted to the church. Franklin D. left to join the saints in Kirtland, and my son George Spencer in 1838 became one of the early martyrs when he was killed in the Massacre of Saints at Haun's Mill in Caldwell County, Missouri. Having the desire to help build the temple of our God, I took my family to settle with the saints in Nauvoo, Illinois. There I was a member of the High Council, and I presided over a branch in the south part of the city. I was a second lieutenant in the Nauvoo Legion, a member of the city council, and a trustee of the school district. I was asked by the prophet to publish an appeal to the inhabitants of Massachusetts for redress of Missouri grievances. We were happy to be with the body of the saints to help build the temple, and to have some of my brothers and sister, Rhoda, also in Nauvoo. I rejoiced to have my wife sealed to me in the temple, and to witness the marriage of my son Samuel and Mary Parker there. When the saints were driven from Nauvoo, my family had to depart, leaving on the 19th of May, 1846. We journeyed to winter quarters, and I was a member of the High Council at that location. Here we were saddened at the death of another son, when we heard that Joseph William, a member of the Mormon battalion, had died. Since my sons Franklin D. and Samuel were sent to the British mission, I took care of their wives with my own. After a period of cold and hardships, we left across the plains in the company of my brother Willard, and we were happy to arrive in Great Salt Lake City October 19, 1848. As soon as I arrived, I was asked to help doctor those who were ill, since my brothers and I had some training in medicine. President Young later sent my family to help settle Sanpete County, where I did missionary work with the Indians and used my medical skill to help the residents in that locality. I was elected a senator in the provisional government of Deseret in 1849 and returned to Salt Lake City. When the territory of Utah was organized, I was elected a representative, and on my fourth term I was made chaplain of the House. At the first July 24th celebration, I was Orator of the Day. In Salt Lake City, I was a bishop's counselor, and then for many years a member of the High Council. I took joy in the accomplishments of my brothers and sisters and my children. Franklin D. had been president of the British mission several times and was appointed a member of the Council of the 12. Samuel had been president of the British mission twice and of the Eastern States mission. Both held many other church positions. Henry Phineas carried on the missionary tradition, and my daughter, wealthy Maria Wilcox, reared a splendid family. My beloved wife, Wealthy, died in 1853. As I grew older, I was invited to live at the home of my son Franklin D. in Ogden, where I was stake patriarch. Always I had a firm testimony of the gospel and rejoiced that all of my family members were honorable men and women and were devoted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Levi Richards, the third son of Joseph and Rhoda, was born December 7, 1790 at Hopkinton. He was taken in death when only 4 1/2, leaving a vacant chair in our family circle. Many years later, Cousin Fanny Young, then a child of 7 1/2, wrote of this sad event.
I remember well how I wept and mourned about him. It was something so sorrowful that he was buried in the ground. I could not bear to think of it. Nancy Richard Pearson, the third daughter of Joseph and Rhoda, was the only one of the girls who married. I was born November 22, 1792, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and married William Pearson March 4, 1819, at Richmond, Berkshire County, Massachusetts. I had 6 children. They were the joy of my life as well as some sorrow. We lived on a large farm, and my husband was a good provider and a hard worker. When the missionaries came with the gospel, I accepted it, and some of my children. My one desire was to serve the Lord and gather with the saints. Because my husband would not permit me to leave, I was excommunicated from Reverend Dwight's congregation. My husband recorded it in his own handwriting, in his selectman book. In August of 1846, my nephews Franklin and Samuel Richards came to see us on their way to England for a mission. Those were joyous days for us all. At other times we heard steps on the bridge and found some of the apostles, Brother Parley P. Pratt and others. They had word from Zion for us about my two daughters, Amelia and Eliza, who were with the saints. Mr. Pearson was always kind to our friends, and often took them in his carriage wherever they needed to go. Our home was always open to them, and their visits were food for my spirit. Susan and I made clothes and quilts to send back. In 1852, when Franklin came from his mission in England, he obtained permission from Mr. Pearson to take Susan and me west with him. Brother Willard had written and said to come home. Franklin had ministered to me several times that I might gain the strength to travel, as I had cancer in its last stages. Within 24 hours we were on our way. Franklin prayed for heaven to sustain me, and the Lord was my comfort and strength. He and Susan did all they could to care for my needs. I had looked forward to resting in Brother Willard's chair after my journey, but I was not privileged to do that, as my journey ended near the Liberty Pole west of Elkhorn on July 15, 1852. But I was happy to be on the way to Zion. Hepzibah Richards, the fourth daughter of Joseph and Rhoda, was born July 28, 1795. She was named for Rhoda's sister Hepzibah, who had no children. I was born July 28, 1795 in Hopkinton, a few weeks after the death of my brother Levi, which somewhat comforted Mother in his loss. I was quick in learning, and my teachers in the day school presented me with certificates for my attainments.
This may certify that Hepzibah Richards is at the head of third class in school and deserves the approbation of her friends, and receive the thanks of her instructor for her good conduct and improvement at school. Signed, J. Valentine, Hopkinton, December 4, 1801. This may certify that Hepzibah Richards has been at the head of her class 8 days since the school began, has been an assiduous, good girl in every branch of her studies, and made good progress in them, and thereby merits the esteem of her instructress. Signed, Polly Cutler, October 3, 1803.
When our family moved west to Richmond, I was going on 20, and Sister Nancy was 22. Sister Rhoda and Susan stayed behind for a time, so Mother depended on Nancy and me for help in getting settled in our new home and doing the many household chores. I attended Williams College and received an invitation to attend the commencement ball, September 5, 1821. My story has been told by Brother Phineas's great-granddaughter, Claire Knoll, as Hepsy Richard on Shoal Creek. Betsy Richard, the fifth daughter of Joseph and Rhoda, was born May 17, 1797. She was named for her mother's sister. Betsy was taken in death when 6½ years old, and we laid her beside her brother Levi to wait the resurrection day.
Levi Richards, the fourth son of Joseph and Rhoda, was born April 14, 1799 at Hopkinton, Massachusetts. We named him Levi for the one we had lost. When I was about 13, Father moved the family to Holliston, 3 miles down the glen. We were there only 3 years, then moved west to Richmond. I helped with the farm work, but was more interested in mechanical pursuits. I learned to play the clarinet and was appointed a musician of the band of music attached to the 2nd Brigade and 9th Division of the Massachusetts Militia. I completed my schooling in Richmond, where I received certification attesting to my unblemished character and allowing me to teach in the district schools. In the summer of 1826, Brother Willard and I received a patentee deed for the sum of $100, granting us the full and exclusive right and liberty of making, using, and vending to others to make and use throughout Berkshire County a new machine he had invented for spinning wool or cotton called the family spinner. We had some success in this venture. When Willard returned from a trip to our relatives in the East, bringing us the Book of Mormon to read, I was convinced of its truth and went with him to Kirtland to meet the prophet Joseph Smith. We were baptized in the River Chagrin on the evening of December 31st, 1836. We stayed in Kirtland, living with Cousin Brigham Young for a time. I was ordained a high priest in December 1837. Apostate factions in Kirtland made it necessary for us to leave Ohio for Caldwell County, Missouri, where I purchased land. The saints were driven from their homes in far west by armed mobs. Brother Phineas's son, George Spencer, was among the 18 or more killed at Haun's Mill. I helped dress the wounds of the injured and extracted lead from bullet wounds. Reuben Hedlock and I were appointed to help in removing the saints from far west to Richmond, Missouri, with their goods en route to Quincy, Illinois. From Quincy, I was called on a mission to England. I sailed from New York on the ship George Washington, October 7, 1840. 3 years later, returning on the ship Sydney, I was in charge of a company of about 180 saints emigrating from England. We landed in New Orleans and journeyed up the Mississippi to Nauvoo. There I became a member of the City Council and first lieutenant in Lorenzo Snow's company of infantry in the Nauvoo Legion, and subsequently became Surgeon General. I was the personal physician of the prophet Joseph Smith, having become a doctor in the Thomsonian School with my brother Willard. On Christmas Day in 1843, I married Miss Sarah Griffith, who I had met while on my mission to England. Cousin Brigham Young performed the ceremony. With Willard, I accompanied Joseph Smith to Carthage that fateful day in June 1844. I returned with others to Nauvoo, leaving Willard and John Taylor to stand by the prophet and his brother. Sarah and I stayed on in Nauvoo. Our son Levi Willard was born there in June 1845. We lived in winter quarters for the next 2 years. Then Brigham Young called Sarah and me to fill another mission in the British Isles. 5 years later, when we reached the valley, we needed to be introduced to our 8-year-old son. We established our home in Salt Lake City, and I spent my time in agricultural and mechanical pursuits. I helped install the machinery at the Farmington Mill in 1861, repaired watches, and invented a washing machine which my nephew Samuel Whitney Richards was anxious to manufacture and sell. I was ordained a patriarch in 1873, serving as such until my death June 18, 1876. Although I had only one child, my descendants now number 156.
William Richards, the fifth son of Joseph and Rhoda, was born May 2, 1801, in Hopkinton, and was named for his grandfather Richards.
I moved west with the family in 1815. At the age of 18, I joined the Congregational Church in Richmond. I was 36 years old when I married Sarah Ann Lewis in West Stockbridge, December 19, 1837. Mother had died the previous spring. Father and Rhoda being the only ones still at home. My wife and I did not join the Mormon Church, but our home was always open to my brothers and nephews as they left for or returned from missions. Father's sister, Aunt Hepzibah Ledbetter, lived with us in her old age. I became postmaster of Richmond and was a member of the Massachusetts State Legislature. I operated the family cider mill after Father's death and had Sister Nancy's sons working for me. In the fall of 1844, we made 600 barrels of cider. I also operated a sawmill and shingle factory and made nearly 200,000 shingles that same year. The last of the family, I died in Alfred, Massachusetts at the age of 82, a year after Sarah's death, and was buried in Richmond. What has become of my only grandson, I do not know. It would please me greatly if you, my brother's descendants, would bring him into the family circle.
Willard Richards, the sixth son of Joseph and Rhoda, and the last of the 11 children, was born June 24, 1804, at Hopkinton, Massachusetts. He was a lovable boy, but of all our sons we found him the most difficult to understand and to teach. But let him tell his own story.
My early years were spent in Hopkinton. Phineas, Father's main help, was then 18, but we 3 younger boys, Levi and William and I, had good times playing and going to school together. When we moved west to the home Father had built for us in Richmond, Levi was 16, William 14, and I 11. The family had been members of the Congregational Church in Hopkinton, and most of them joined Reverend Mr. Dwight's congregation in Richmond. I had thought and wondered much about religion, and liked to read all the books I could find. Although I was somewhat careless in my dress and appearance, I studied hard to prepare myself for acceptance into the congregation. But Mr. Dwight considered me unworthy, and feeling rejected, I turned more to scientific studies, qualifying myself to become a teacher. I also gave exhibitions in electrochemistry. At this time, Sister Rhoda was suffering for cancer, and there had been so much sickness in my father's family that I determined to take up the study of Thomsonian medicine. Brother Levi joined me in my studies. We gathered herbs, made pills, and had good success in treating ills. It was while visiting Uncle and Aunt Parker in Southborough that I first saw the Book of Mormon, which Cousin Brigham Young had left with them. I read it through twice in 10 days and knew that either God or the devil had had a hand in that book, for man never wrote it. Then I realized God had something greater for me to do than peddle pills. I determined to go west to meet Joseph Smith, but while still in the east I suffered a strange seizure or stroke that left me partly paralyzed. It was more than 2 months before I was able to return home. Their cousins Brigham and Joseph Young came to teach us the gospel. Father and Mother would have none of it, but Brother Levi and I determined to go to Kirtland to meet the prophet and to make a home for Sister Hepzibah, who also believed. On the last day of the year 1836, Levi and I were baptized in the Chagrin River by Cousin Brigham Young, and from then until my death, I devoted myself to the ministry. The account of my mission to England, where I was ordained an apostle and where I found my dear wife Janetta, is told by Claire Knoll in her book Intimate Disciple, also of my return and my service as a scribe to the prophet in Nauvoo, of my imprisonment with him in Carthage jail, and my effort to keep peace among our people following the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram Smith. As second counselor to President Brigham Young, I led a company of saints to Utah in 1848 and served as postmaster until my early death, March 11, 1854. I buried Janetta in Nauvoo. 11 other good women were sealed to me as wives, and we were blessed with 15 children. My descendants now number more than 2,300. Our common ancestor, Joseph Richards, was awarded a pension for his military service at the rate of $61.32 per year to commence on March 4, 1831. The Hopkinton land records under date of October 9, 1789, show that Joseph Richards purchased 9.5 acres, bounded on the south by Phineas Howe and on the west by Thomas Bixby. Under date of June 11, 1804, Joseph and Rhoda sold 14 3/4 acres.
The journal entries of Rhoda Richards tell of the final few days of Joseph and Rhoda Howe Richards. February 11, 1838. Mother complained of her head. Ate with us, but kept her bed most of the day. February 12. Mother sat with Sister Sarah in the west room most of the day. At eve, she sat at the table with us for the last time. She then went on to the bed. At 9, she rose, set her feet in warm water, took medicine, went to bed. At 10, thought she might have a comfortable night, but soon she was taken in great distress, continued so until 2. Then she desired Father to call me. I instantly went, found her in her low chair. I said to her, "Mother, you are very sick." She replied she could not live long, and pressed my hand twice on her side. Her heart was in a dreadful commotion. Brother William and I administered medicine and did all we could do. She lay before the fire until 7 in the morn, then walked to bed with help. She appeared to sleep some. She was very sick, distressed and restless. Sister Nancy came at 11 in the morn. Mother continued about the same until sunset and dark. Then she began to pray with an audible voice, first for herself, her companion, her children, her brothers, her sisters, her friends everywhere, the church, the whole world, then closed. She soon opened her eyes on me, gave her best love to all my friends everywhere. Tell them I love them all, in particular my sister and Brigham. Then she turned over. William sat by and said to her, "I hope, Mother, you will yet live to enjoy much with us." She replied, "If I did not know my own weaknesses, I might get well. It would be a wonder of wonders if I should, but God is able, I know." Then she had stopped. We thought to let her rest. She appeared more quiet, would sleep some minutes at a time. I went to bed at 9. William went. Father went at 11, at Mother's request, for she said he would be sick. Sister Nancy and Franklin sat up until 3. William got up. Nancy and Father went to bed. I took Mother by the hand and said, "William is up to take care of you. I will lay down and try to sleep a little." She said, "Where?" I said, "Upstairs." I left her at 4, apparently in a quiet sleep. She desired Brother William to let her sleep until he waked. The last time she waked, took a cup, drank alone, and fell asleep. Brother went 2 or 3 times. In about half an hour she went. She was gone, never to return. February 14th, Wednesday morn at 7, we were called. When I went to bed, she lay just as I had left her. Her countenance, not changed, was warm and moist. February 16th, 1838, she was laid by the side of Sister Susan. Mr. Kent preached. March 17th, 1840. This day Father is 78 years old. Will another year find him here? The Lord knows what is past and what is to come. March 23rd. At 6:30 this morning I was called from my chambers to see Father. I found him sitting on the side of the bed, all dressed, but his coat insensible. We undressed him and laid him back into the bed, shaking. We succeeded in getting him warm. His medicine in some degree did well, did not seem to realize but little. We sent for Brother Phineas and Sister Nancy. When called, I did not feel shocked in the least. I was looking for this event and felt it was Father's last sickness. The Lord gave me strength, and I desired to praise His holy name. Tuesday, March 24th, I received a letter from my brother Willard and Damon Richards today. Father asked if we heard from Uncle Thomas and sent his love to Willard and Janetta. Father asked this morning what situation he was in when they found he was sick. He said the last he knew, he rose up in bed. He shook and the bedclothes shook. The palsy in some measure appeared to leave him, and a raging fever had set in. Today asked Mr. Hyman what he thought about his getting well, and bade Miss Lydia Clark goodbye and asked her to pray for him when she got near the throne of grace. I carried little Anne to him. He shook hands with her and said, "What has my little daughter been doing today?" He smiled and appeared like himself. March 25th, Father appeared more insensible today. His medicine has all the time made him very sick. Thursday, March 26th. This morning all hopes were given up. We left all medicine and tried to nourish Father with his most desires. Father looked upon me and said, "We are all carrying along." Friday, March 27th. I want to be laid by the side of Mother. Saturday, March 28th. Father looked up this morning and said, "I am now ready to go." He appeared to be growing nearer his end, although we got him up and changed all his things. Sunday, March 29th. At 6:30 a visible change took place. Death appeared to be near. Blood settled under his nails. Feet cold, his breathing shorter and shorter, till 6:30. He looked up on Sister and said farewell to Nancy. He tried to say a great deal to us, but we could not understand. He continued to breathe shorter and shorter until 10 minutes past 9, then went as a candle goeth out, with a smile on his countenance. When Father went, I felt my cup was full. My Heavenly Father has promised to be a father to the fatherless, is the orphan's friend, the promise I claimed and wiped away my tears. We sent for Mr. Lewis Sherrill. Mr. Jonas Cohn was present. They, with the children, laid out the corpse. Sister Nancy and myself were the only females to do anything. At 1 o'clock the family retired, and they too spent the night. Monday, March 30th, a very rainy day. Preparations for the funeral. Tuesday, March 31st, 1840. A solemn day. The remains of our dear father were deposited by the side of Mother. The solemn scene was conducted by his persecutors. It was a trying scene to me. I could hardly submit, but so it is. We were not permitted to have a minister of Christ to preach to us in our afflictions. Father, mother, brothers, sisters 3, thou art gone. The strong cords are severed that binds me to earth.
Joseph Richards was baptized by proxy at Nauvoo in 1841 and again June 29, 1870 in the Endowment House, Salt Lake City, Utah, and endowed in the Logan Temple December 4, 1889. Rhoda was baptized by proxy June 1, 1870 in the Endowment House, and again May 12, 1931, and endowed December 5, 1889 in the Logan Temple, and again June 1, 1931. Joseph and Rhoda were sealed in the Endowment House December 2, 1872, for time and all eternity, and again January 15, 1963, in the Manti Temple. Joseph Richards and Rhoda Howe were the proud parents of 11 children, 6 sons and 5 daughters, as follows. Joseph Richards, Jr. was born September 29, 1782, at Framingham, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married November 27, 1806, at Dudley, Worcester County, Massachusetts, to Nancy Cody. She bore him 10 children. Nancy died October 9, 1863, age 77, at Dublin, Cheshire County, New Hampshire. Joseph died January 21, 1852, age 69, at Westboro, Worcester County, Massachusetts.
Rhoda Richards was born August 8, 1784, at Framingham, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married and sealed June 12, 1843, to the prophet Joseph Smith. After his death, Rhoda was married for time only to Brigham Young, January 31, 1846, in the Nauvoo Temple. Rhoda died January 17, 1879, aged 94, at Salt Lake City, and was buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Susanna Richards was born August 13, 1786, at Framingham, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was sealed September 13, 1871, to the prophet Joseph Smith. Susanna died April 11, 1830, aged 43, at Framingham, and was buried there.
Phineas Richards was born November 15, 1788, at Framingham, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married February 24, 1818, at Richmond, Berkshire County, Massachusetts, to Wealthy Dewey. She bore him 9 children. Wealthy died Tuesday, October 18, 1853, age 67, at Salt Lake City, and was buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Phineas died Wednesday, November 25, 1874, age 86, at Salt Lake City, and was buried Friday, November 27th, in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Levi Richards was born December 7, 1790, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and died June 17, 1795, age 4, at Hopkinton.
Nancy Richards was born November 22, 1792, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married March 4, 1819, at Richmond, Berkshire County, Massachusetts, to William Pearson. Nancy bore him 6 children. William died April 17, 1862, at age 68, at Richmond, and was buried there. Nancy was sealed to Brigham Young September 13, 1871, in the Endowment House. Nancy died July 15, 1852, age 59, by the Platte River near Liberty Pole, Nebraska, and was buried there the same day. Hepzibah Richard was born July 28, 1795, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was sealed September 13, 1871, in the Endowment House to Brigham Young. Hepzibah died September 30, 1838, age 43, at Shoal Creek, Caldwell County, Missouri. Betsy Richards was born May 17, 1797, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and died December 12, 1803, age 6, at Hopkinton, Massachusetts.
Levi Richards was born April 14, 1799, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married December 25, 1843, at Nauvoo, Hancock County, Illinois, to Sarah Griffith. She bore him 1 child. Sarah died Tuesday, June 7, 1892, age 89, at Salt Lake City, and was buried Thursday, June 9th, in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Levi was married and sealed January 27, 1846, in the Nauvoo Temple, to Persis Goodall. They had no children. Persis died September 16, 1894, age 88, at Salt Lake City, and was buried September 19th in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Levi died Sunday, June 18, 1876, age 77, at Salt Lake City, and was buried Wednesday, June 21st, in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. William Richards was born May 2, 1801, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married December 19, 1837, at West Stockbridge, Berkshire County, Massachusetts, to Sarah Ann Lewis. She bore him one child. Sarah died November 18, 1818, at Richmond. William died March 7, 1884, age 82, at Alford, Berkshire County, Massachusetts, and was buried at West Stockbridge. Willard Richards was born June 24, 1804, at Hopkinton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and was married September 24, 1838, at Preston, Lancashire, England, to Jeanette Richards. She bore him 3 children. Jeanette died Wednesday, July 9, 1845, age 27, at Nauvoo, Hancock County, Illinois, and was buried there Friday, July 11th. Willard was married January 22, 1846, in the Nauvoo Temple to Sarah Longstraw. She bore him 4 children. Sarah died Tuesday, January 26, 1858, age 31, at Salt Lake City. Willard was married January 25, 1846, in the Nauvoo Temple to Nanny Longstraw. She bore him 3 children. Nanny died Saturday, January 7, 1911, age 82, at Salt Lake City, and was buried Tuesday, January 10th, in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Willard was married January 27, 1846, in the Nauvoo Temple to Mary Thompson. She bore him 2 children. Mary died Sunday, September 10, 1905, age 77, at Riverside, Box Elder County, Utah, and was buried Tuesday, September 12th, at Farmington, Davis County, Utah. Willard was married and sealed December 22, 1847, at Winter Quarters, now Florence, Douglas County, Nebraska, to Susanna Bayless. She bore him 1 child. Susanna died Friday, April 17, 1891, age 78, at Farmington, Davis County, Utah, and was buried April 19th in the Farmington City Cemetery. Willard was married and sealed November 30th, 1851, at Salt Lake City, to Rhoda Harriet Foss. She bore him 1 child.
Rhoda died Saturday, November 19, 1881, age 51, at Farmington, Davis County, Utah, and was buried there Monday, November 21st. Willard died Saturday, March 11, 1854, age 49, at Salt Lake City, and was buried Sunday, March 12th.
Total known posterity of Joseph Richards as of 15 September 1995. 11 children, 42 grandchildren, 228 great-grandchildren, 673 second-great-grandchildren, 1,843 third-great-grandchildren, 3,677 fourth-great-grandchildren, 1,588 fifth-great-grandchildren, 119 sixth-great-grandchildren, for a total posterity of 8,182, with 3,610 total spouses of children, grandchildren, etc., making a total posterity of 11,792, including spouses.
As descendants of these fine and faithful people, let us remember their strong, wonderful qualities and try to live our lives to make them proud of us.